You ready? Yeah. I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, October 20th, 2015 to order with roll call, please.
McAlpine.
Here.
Cavelli. Here. Chapman.
Here.
Kozler.
Here.
Dudek.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now move to public comments, where the public is invited to make comments regarding anything otherwise that's on the agenda. I don't think we have anybody here. I think we have a petitioner here.
No.
Like to note trustee Kraus is in attendance.
Got it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Moving to the consideration of the September 24th, 2015 Special Village Board Meeting Minutes. Were there any additions, edits, corrections? Okay, consent to go to consent agenda. Thank you. We'll do the same for the October 6th, 2015 Committee of the Whole Meeting Minutes. Corrections, edits? Thank you. And finally, the October 6th, 2015 Village Board Meeting Minutes.
I just had a couple things I was wondering if we should add to it on page 6. I didn't know if we should be putting in there that Mr. Cook said that he was okay to break down the approval as, number one for the project, and then number two, he was okay to have the impact fee separately. I know that we mentioned it down here, but I think it's important that we have on there that the petitioner said that he was okay to address it that way.
Okay,
And then one more thing on page, the next one. I know, this is not normally me, look at me.
let it rock.
The other one is that I thought it might be, and I don't even remember which one of the public comments made the comment about that it was overcrowding for the schools, but I thought it might be relevant to put that in there because we go down here and we indicate that District 26 and 155 are at a 10-year low, and it doesn't make sense why we would have that on there unless we were addressing it because a petitioner said they were concerned for that.
Good point.
Okay.
What I might suggest is we bring these back at the next board meeting after those edits are made and vote on it at the next village board meeting. So we can be in agreement on how that's written.
Okay.
So that comment, just so I'm clear, can you restate what you're saying with respect to
I was
this?
saying that one of the public comments, one of the residents was concerned, saying that our schools were overcrowded. And that, I believe, is why the comment came in afterwards, saying that per District 26 and 155 were actually at the lowest census possible. It just didn't make sense in here why we had that in here
Right.
unless someone asked about it.
Got it.
Okay. Any other additions, corrections?
I did have just a question. Obviously, I wasn't there, so I didn't get to hear the conversation, but I'm curious about was there any commentary regarding consumption on the premises for the liquor license that was requested?
Oh, for the tobacco shop?
Uh-huh. And that was one thing, and then is that the same place that had problems?
No, this is the one that's next to Jewel. He's been a stand-up corporate citizen.
And isn't that a kind of a odd place to have consumption of liquor? To be honest with you, it just seems.
Well, he's trying to increase his business model a little bit to draw a little bit more attention to his location. We thought it was a decent fit for that area. And it's just, I believe it's just beer and wine.
Okay. And then on the next page, did we have any questions or discussions regarding how we could have a difference of code requirements posted online versus hard copies?
Which page are you referring to?
Page 6, under number 3, it says Director Simmons stated there was differences in the code requirements posted online versus print copies that some of the ZPA members had. How does that happen?
I don't see where he's at.
Page 6 of 11. Trustee
Yes,
Dudek,
correct.
and the village
Sorry,
report.
page 5 of 11.
Okay, that's,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Sorry.
It's not there.
My mistake.
Yeah, we discussed that at the meeting with that specific case. There was a table that was missing when the Muni Code process occurred. So as we had discussed at the meeting and the trustee had asked about it, I explained that we're in the process of auditing all the code once again, just to make sure there aren't any other mishaps such as that. So we've been doing that over the last 3 weeks.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just trying to sync everything up. Thank you. All right, moving to a discussion of conceptual plan for senior housing development. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief introduction I'll do based off the staff memo that is in your packets, and then I'll turn the discussion over to Mr. Berg from Pearl Development to kind of give an overview of their project and what they're looking to do within Cary. As indicated in the staff report, staff has received recently some considerable interest in developing senior housing projects within Cary. We did have 2 projects that were interested. One is before you this evening going forward. The other project did not pursue going through the development through purchasing the property. But this evening, Pearl is proposing a concept plan for a 68-unit senior housing development on the corner of Feinberg Drive and 3 Oaks Road, and wanted to have discussion on that project on a conceptual basis before they formally submit to go through the cost and expense of the zoning process to formalize final plans for that project. The staff report gives a little overview as far as comprehensive plan designation for the property, potential zoning for this proposed development, specifically looking at the comp plan. The plan is developed or designated for commercial development, business park. There is in the the comprehensive plan references to increase senior housing within the community, but does not indicate specifically locations where senior housing could go, but mentions that the village be flexible in reviewing proposals that come forward for locations that might be appropriate for the incorporation of senior housing. And looking at that and compared to the surrounding land uses in the area, staff felt the site might be an appropriate location for a housing project to go in due to the location of Bright Oaks across 3 Oaks Road, and the site being a transitional area from that residential area to commercial areas to the south. Looking at zoning for the property, it's currently zoned BP Business Park District, which permits various commercial uses and light manufacturing uses. It does not permit retail as present. Also, residential is not permitted within the district, so it would require for this project to go forward a rezoning of the property. There's 2 designations that might be appropriate for the site. Would be either the R3 multifamily district or the the B4 neighborhood convenience business district, which is the same district that the assisted living facility on the corner of Silver Lake and 3 Oaks Road has designated for it. The staff report kind of gives a brief overview of some variations that might be required for the project. Again, it's very preliminary at this point, so that may change as the project moves forward. But as proposed, with the 68 units, it would be a proposed density of about 17.8 units per acre, which is slightly higher than the existing 3 Oaks living facility at 15.3 units per acre. Also, the village's affordable housing plan, which we adopted earlier this year, does identify or provided specific language to try and further affordable housing within the village through a need to bring in more senior housing options from that standpoint. So this project would be in line with the recommendations of that plan. I'll be more than happy to answer any more questions you may have on the technical side of the village's requirements and plans. But with that, I'll also turn over to a developer to give more information on his project and proposed development. If there's any questions?
Brian, have we looked at the existing R3 properties that are available in Cary that already carry the required, space and village code without variances?
As far as existing properties that are zoned R3, there are not any really vacant properties that are zoned R3. Most of them are already currently developed. The only vacant parcel that I'm aware of is the one that was discussed for the project a few weeks ago. The rest of the properties that are zoned R3 have all been developed,
Taken
to my
up.
knowledge. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Berg. I'm a principal with Pearl Developers. We are a residential developer, builder, owner, located, headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge staff. Your staff was fantastic in getting us to this point and just helping us understand the process. And I also appreciate the opportunity to come to the committee of the whole, and just have an honest discussion and understand your feedback and what the process may look like. This is a concept, this senior housing development is a concept that we were interested in pursuing last fall, but the timing was not particularly right for a number of reasons. So we think hopefully there's a better window of opportunity now. So appreciate this opportunity to get your feedback. What I'd like to do quickly is just walk through this PowerPoint, and I understand you have hard copies in front of you, just to introduce my firm, what we're all about, and to talk more importantly about the project concept that you have before you. So Pearl, as I mentioned, we're an integrated developer builder based in Cleveland, Ohio. We have done about 36 single-family and multifamily developments over the past 10 years in the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and about 8 states. We are an affordable housing developer, and half of everything we've done is multifamily, multi-story senior housing, like the proposal that we want to talk to you about today. So we're very familiar with this product, with this particular proposal. We've been around, we're in our 11th year at this point. We're recognized within our industry, have some recognition here. We were recently named a top 50 developer by Affordable Housing Finance for the second time, which is nice. We've also received some accolades for some of the senior housing developments that we've done. I pulled a couple of deal sheets from the office because I thought these developments were somewhat similar to the communities like Cary that we've developed in previously. This first deal sheet just shows a development in Shaker Heights, Ohio. This is sort of a postage stamp sized lot that was given to us or sold to us by the city of Shaker Heights. It is in a high visibility corridor, a main artery next to an award-winning library, right next to light rail transit, next to about 150,000 square feet of retail. So it was a sort of a highly coveted site, and we worked in partnership with Shaker Heights on this development. It's smaller, it's 44 apartments, filled up pretty quickly and has a significant waiting list. This is not really an infill deal, but I included this because this is our first development that we're finishing actually here in Illinois in Sugar Grove, Kane County. But it's sort of relevant because it's in a what I'd call a transitional strip, a transition zone between residential to the north and a retail commercial corridor that's being created to the south. So there's some relevance here. This is 60 units. Of senior housing, 1 and 2 bedroom senior apartments. Loveland, Ohio, which is a more affluent bedroom community of Cincinnati. We did an infill development there on again, a high profile site in what's called a special planning district, which required more significant upgrades to the development and the design. The city was very happy with that development. This happens to be just another design, urban infill type development, just to show you the flexibility of design. So that's a little bit of background, very little background on my company. I'm happy to answer questions about Pearl as we go on here.
Are these all senior housing developments that Pearl does?
Yeah, what I pulled out were senior developments. Yes, we've done 36 developments. Probably half of them at least, or 60%, are senior developments like the one we're proposing. Mid-rise, elevator buildings. So that's what I featured here, just a couple of those. You get a sense of the interior spaces. What we're trying to do here is create a vibrant senior community for independent seniors, which we'll talk more about. So let's turn our attention to the proposal at hand. Obviously, the site at Three Oaks and Feinberg on that vacant parcel at the corner, 68-unit mid-rise apartment building for seniors, independent seniors age 55 and older. There would be a restrictive covenant that would run with the property for at least 30 years to ensure that that is the case. Dual elevator building, significant community spaces, library, exercise room, large community room for gatherings and where we could program different supportive services in different events. One-bedroom apartments would be somewhere around $650 net. 2 bedrooms, $850. You've got at least 10% handicap accessible units. The building itself is entirely visitable. We do handicap adaptable units, so seniors could age in place with tons of universal design features as well. The building is built to very high standards. 2x6, frame construction, above average insulation, enterprise green building standards, energy efficient construction, all types of sustainable building practices, in part because of the financing that we use. Local economic impact, I'm still working with Brian on this, but right off the bat, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of $375,000 of impact. We're not looking, oftentimes when we go to a municipality, we're looking for help or participation through fee waivers or home funds. If the jurisdiction is large enough, TIF, tax abatement. We're not pursuing any of that, but we do anticipate, based on a quick analysis, about $375,000 in impact fees and tree removal fees, building permits and the like. Still working through that. Real estate taxes are expected to average around $135,000 over the first 15 years of the development. We'll continue to creep up after that. Construction costs, close to $10 million in construction costs. We always try to buy out the job as local as possible for subcontractors and suppliers. The entire development is about $16.7 million. The very bird's eye view of the timeline, we're here because we want to initiate a rezoning process next month and submit a packet next month if we think that makes sense after this discussion. And we would submit for financing to the Illinois Housing Development Authority in February, end of February, which would require that the site be rezoned at that point, secure the financing in 2016, go through design development, start construction in 2017. It's a 10 to 12 month build out. And based on market conditions, we anticipate that the building would fill up pretty quickly thereafter. And to that point, and the central reason why we're here is because, as you well know, you have a need for this type of housing, an unmet need. And what we're trying to do is serve a very localized senior population, what we believe is a localized senior population that just doesn't have housing choice. Seniors who live on a fixed income through, SSI or maybe some pension income. Some of them might work part-time, but they're on a fixed income. And even though the age restriction is 55 plus, I think what we tend to see in these developments is that the reality is that the average age might be in the 70s, low 70s and higher even. And 85% of the apartments might have a single widower living in the apartment. And you've got those seniors here in your market area, and those seniors they're overhoused. They can't keep up with the maintenance in their homes, maybe making bad economic decisions, or maybe they're coming from a different housing situation, but they need to leave the market area because they don't have housing choice. But we would anticipate that the seniors who would move into a development like this are seniors who grew up here, seniors who currently live here, or seniors who have family who live here who want to bring their parents closer to them. And, half of these seniors may well come from a home ownership situation where it's time to downsize. Brian already mentioned, consistent with elements of the comprehensive plan, helps meet objectives within your recent affordable housing plan, which calls for senior housing. But the key statistics, I think, on the market side is that, we did an initial analysis and found that there would be about a 3.2% capture rate of all the age and income eligible households within the primary market area. 2,259 age and income qualified households within the PMA. Not only that, but your senior households are anticipated to grow by almost 12% by 2020. So there's a clear and present need and a growing need as well. So the 68 units that we're proposing, that's a good start, but how far it gets us, we'll see. Obviously, we're looking to rezone to R3, seems to be the recommendation, and that would require some variances, which we're continuing to talk through, and Brian mentioned it, related to density, parking. Not sure about setback. We could probably meet the setback requirements, and we're close on height, but those are some of the things that we would need to look at as we go through the process. The primary market area, I thought it was important just to put it in here. This is, an independent market study firm that just did a quick look, and the PMA includes all of the village, but also pieces of Crystal Lake, Lake in the Hills, and some of the sort of unincorporated area that's immediately next to you, next to the village. The site, you're familiar with the site, it's sort of the missing tooth on Three Oaks. But, one of the, and Brian mentioned this, but one of the reasons that we like this site is because we do think it's in a transitional area between that residential and cluster housing to the north, and that, retail and all types of services to the south, and the park to the east. Closer shot. The site plan, it's a tricky site. It's got some topography. It's on a secondary corridor. There's a lot of things to consider when developing this site. And the architect came to town, the civil engineer came to town, and we had a lot of dialogue based on the current grades, based on the zoning. And obviously, we would have to give you much more detail if we were to make a submission next month, but based on a preliminary analysis, the team thought it would make the most sense to have a building in the approximate location where you see it here. We have basically two wings, and you're entering off of Feinberg, and you have a second means of egress in the back of the parking lot there. Three-story, as I mentioned, a three-story wood frame building on a slab. And the community spaces, you can't see it at this point, but the community spaces are all sort of congregated in the center. But how this sort of relates to Feinberg and how it kind of attaches to the current sidewalk system and how we get seniors over to the park, those are all things that we're studying. So again, why this location in particular? As was mentioned before, there is sort of a lack of other ready R3 sites. But we think this is a wonderful amenity-rich location. You're probably familiar with everything that is right there. We love the park and, the walking path at the park, the 2 pharmacies, full-service grocery. You're less than a mile from here, from the senior center. There's a lot to be said for that location. We're very enthusiastic about it. And again, being at the edge of the business park and the commercial zone, we're sort of in between. And we think that this kind of density and this kind of structure is a nice transition between what's happening to the north and the commercial to the south, higher density. The site itself can contain this community pretty well and all of the parking needs, and we still think we can leave all of the, I shouldn't say that, we can leave the trees and the foliage, which we know is important to shield the Jewel Osco and some of the other things from Three Oaks, and we're trying to be sensitive to that as well. Also, the impact to traffic with this use versus, say, a hotel, for example. It's just lighter traffic, a lot lighter traffic coming out onto Feinberg and onto Three Oaks, which is important as well. I included a few kind of elevation concepts. Our head of construction likes to say that, your taste is in your mouth, but I don't love what we see here, but these are just sort of watercolor drawings that the architect came up with, and I wouldn't say that if he was standing next to me. But it's fine. We just have a few concepts for you to get a sense of how we could approach the building. I think what's more important than what you see up here is the fact that we're committed to something that is architecturally harmonious, that kind of fits with what you would expect in that location. So to have block, to have brick, to have hardy board, maybe some vinyl accenting or vinyl on the top. I mean, those are things that we need to work through with staff, and we haven't gotten that far yet, but we just wanted to give you at least a perspective of what it looks like here from Feinberg Drive. This first one was obviously from the shopping center. I mean, here's another sort of color scheme. As you pull into the parking lot in the back, as you pull out of the parking lot in the back, this is from Three Oaks at the intersection, from the post office, from the front entrance, as you're looking at the building, which obviously is in the back. Floor plans won't mean anything because you can't really see them. But again, those community spaces are all sort of centralized. We also have laundry rooms on all 3 floors that we plan for. One bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. I also included, it's hard to see here, but this may be a little bit dated, but just took a look at about 8 other senior developments which would attract a similar population, showing that we basically at these different facilities have at least 1-to-1 parking, 104% coverage, or 1.04 spaces for every unit. But then we looked at the average daily cars in each lot, and we found out that we really don't even need, a third of the spaces. And it's not such a big deal here, because if you want us to, we could probably land bank some spaces. There's enough room on the site. But we generally find that even with visiting family, even with staff and supportive services, one-to-one a one-to-one ratio is really sufficient. At the Sugar Grove development that we're finishing, there's lots of space down there, but even there, we land banked a number of parking spaces, and we ended up at 1.15 to 1. There's another senior development down the street in Oswego that also has 1.5 to 1. And that's actually what we did here on the site plan. I think we came up with about 78 parking spaces, but this is flexible and it's something we can talk about. But I believe that that's one of the variances that we'd probably be seeking if we went to R3. I also included, and we can go into this in more depth, I know you guys are not new to this, but this $16.7 million development is financed chiefly through the syndication of affordable housing tax credits from IDA. About 73% of total development costs are financed with the tax credit, and the rest of the financing comes from different parts and pieces, gap funding from IDA, traditional, conventional first mortgage. And the beauty of this program is that because the must-pay debt is so relatively low, that's what allows us to build such high quality but keep rents below market for seniors on a fixed income. And in this case, we're talking about seniors who have incomes at or below 60% of the median income for Chicago, Joliet, Naperville, MSA. We can talk more about that as well, but that's sort of the quick version, the quick presentation. I didn't know exactly what kind of questions you might have, but happy to take the time to answer those. The goal would be to move forward, submit obviously more comprehensive plans to staff before Thanksgiving, so we could come to you in December, or start the process in December and try to complete the process by February.
I had a question. We had a slide in here, I don't know if I saw it or not, that said that there'll be a 30-year commitment. What happens after that 30 years?
It's a good question. Well, we're required through the tax credit program to have a restriction for 15 years, but IDA then tax on another 15 years. So the indenture of restrictive covenant sort of goes away, and in theory, anything can happen. Anything can happen. But if you want a longer commitment than that, that's something we can talk about too. I mean, the intent.
And I know you said something about you guys have been in business for 11 years, so have you had any properties then that have expired with this commitment?
No.
Okay.
No, we have not. But I've been involved in this business, in this industry, a bit longer than that. And there have been a number of senior properties that I've worked on that have come out of the 15-year compliance period. And, there's such demand in those particular areas, again, for this kind of quality of those rents that they continue on. They continue on as senior housing.
But there's a possibility after 30 years, it may no longer be designated for just seniors?
An owner operator would, they would have the ability to do that. That's not our intent, and there are safeguards that we can put in place if that's a concern with the village, but that is possible.
Safeguards like what?
Longer commitment, I don't know, 50-year commitment, have a longer restrictive covenant on the property so that it remains for seniors. Something like that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just to add to that as well, from a zoning perspective, if the approvals were based off a senior housing project, there are conditions you can do as part of the zoning approval that would have longer restrictive covenants. in that regards, but if it were to convert to a straight rental property versus a senior housing property, that kicks in other code requirements for parking requirements. If you would grant variations based off this type of development for senior housing mix in the property, and it goes to a more rental mix, not age restricted, then parking requirements could kick in at that point where additional parking or zoning relief might be required at a future date. So that's part of the approvals. You can put conditions on the use from that standpoint to make sure that it remains senior housing, or have a end game plan for when it does switch, 30 years out.
Brian, I have a question for you, Brian, while you're up there. So what we're looking at here is a zoning change, a conditional use, a variance on height, a density variation, and would it be a variance on parking spaces as well?
Depends on what the final project is, but the zoning, yes. Conditional use, yes. The height and setbacks depends on the final design as far as where the building's located right now. The concept plan that was shown, it meets the front setbacks. The height is a maximum height of 30 feet, which is a flexible height for that zoning district. So depending on where the building's sited, they could go higher if it's rezoned to R3. The parking, if the mix might be similar to what the assisted living facility is on Silver Lake Road, that parking requirement is different than what it would be for an apartment complex. Our code is 2.25 spaces per unit for an apartment complex. But for a assisted living facility, which is the most comparable use that we have in our code, it's based off the number of beds and employees. So if there's a 68 beds in the facility, and the numbers will be higher than that based off the 2-bedroom units. If you use the 1-to-1 ratio, it would be 68 parking spaces for the 68 units, plus if there's 5 employees, 73 parking spaces required. So it depends on what the final mix would be, but there might be a couple of variations required as part of the final project.
I just have some comments. I assume that most people on this board are for affordable senior housing. Is that correct?
I am.
But I'm just wondering if we're going down this path where all our affordable housing is government subsidized housing projects. I truly believe we can attract projects that are market rate that are still affordable. So I struggle with this concept, especially at this location, when we're giving up a piece of potentially commercially developable land that could bring us some taxes, and we're giving it to somebody that gets preferred tax treatment.
I think, and you can obviously speak better to this than I, because you're in the business, but from the financing side, I would tell you that that's primarily what's going on. And that's the primary way you get these things built. So to have somebody who's, unless you have a whole bunch of people with a lot of money to put down, which is not typically the case, not typically, I'm not saying it's not impossible, but not typically the case, then the tax credit financing is the most viable, and I think most commonly found way to get these financed.
Well, go ahead, Jeff.
I think that might be the notion for financing it, but I think when most people came to those comprehensive plan meetings and said they were looking for more options of senior housing in the community, I don't think they were looking at another big block apartment complex as the answer to needing more senior housing in the community. I think they were looking for more smaller homes, single-story homes. And I think we need to maybe think out of the box and think about what do we really want to see as senior housing in the community. We have Westlake sitting out there that's asking us for some direction. And I'm thinking possibly we could build smaller homes between those townhomes that match the townhomes that would be a smaller version of what's out there already. And that could be affordable housing for the seniors. I'm not in favor of rezoning this property. And I think we need to look at what people really wanted when they said they wanted more senior housing in the community. Because I don't think what most people had in mind was a big block apartment complex funded by government.
Yeah, well, just if I can just clarify a couple things. When we say affordable housing and affordability, we're referring to the rents, being able to keep the rents appropriate for a senior in her 70s who is on a fixed income, and there are many, many seniors in your community and in the nearby area. So there are different needs, but when you're talking about affordable housing, when we're talking about affordable housing, that's what we're talking about. So to build to this kind of quality that we're building to, absent that tax credit equity, the rents would be 2 or 3 times that amount. You couldn't make it affordable per se.
But during the comprehensive plan meetings, were people coming saying they wanted affordable senior housing, or were they saying they were just looking for more options for senior housing, downsizing? I don't know if they were looking for government subsidized vouchers to, in an apartment complex. I don't think that's what people in Cary really wanted.
I would agree with Trustee Kraus. In fact, I'd like to dissect who would be actually able to qualify to live there.
Sure.
If I'm unemployed, can I live there?
No.
So how much money do I have to make to live there?
Well, the maximum is currently about $36,400. So having annual income of $36,400, and it's an income test. It's not an asset test. So for seniors who are downsizing, selling a home, that's not the test.
So that's the maximum. But
Correct.
What's the minimum I have to make to live there?
The minimum could be, there would probably be some apartments that could serve seniors, at 40% of the median income, 30%, maybe. I don't know if the number is offhand. It could be 12,000, it could be 18,000. There's a floor.
Okay.
You've got to be able to pay rent. And one thing I would correct actually in the comments is that it's not government housing as you might think. This tax credit is the cornerstone of the federal housing policy, and it has stood the test of time for one reason, because it's the private sector that's coming in to buy the tax credits. The investors in these deals, and here's an example here, in these types of deals are, large institutions that need a federal, they're looking for They're looking for a tax, they're looking for a tax break by investing in this type of housing. And because they come in as the limited partners, not the government, they are watching these assets like a hawk. These are incredibly well-run assets. They have a default rate of, well below 1% for a reason. So it's an IRS tax credit, and the tax credit is designed to attract private equity. That's why the program has been so successful since it was enacted under the Reagan administration in 1986.
I have no doubt that the tax credits are very lucrative, and that's why they're attractive. I can't see BP and Campbell and any of these companies going, we're doing this to make affordable housing. They're doing it to offset their tax burden. I'd buy them if I could, because if I had a $10,000 tax bill, I could eliminate my tax bill one for one if I buy these credits, and that's
sure. But the credits come in. I appreciate that, but the credits flow in, as you know, over a 10-year period. And if this property or any of these properties operate out of compliance with Section 42 of the Internal Revenue Code, which governs the tax credit, they have a recapture event, and they lose those credits. So they have asset management departments, they have compliance departments that help to operate these properties. But, I just bring it up because I just want to sort of be accurate in how we're describing the development. It's not, it's not a government-run property.
Well, back to what I was saying, there is a narrow income range to be able to live there. And it's anywhere from what you're saying, $12,000 to $18,000 to $36,000 a year. That's a very small range. Mm-hmm. Plus, you have to be over 55. So you literally are discriminating against probably 95% or more of the population that can't even live there. And I have issue with that, you know.
Well, you could make that argument for conventionally financed market rate housing. You're discriminating against a significant percentage as well. You have 2,259 households right now in the primary market area. A lot of them are right here that, you know, that they're in that income range. So yeah, it is discriminatory if you're going to look at it from that perspective, but so too is market rate housing, because you know, you have a significant percentage of the population here that can't afford that either. So they're not mutually exclusive. That's the only point I wanted to make. I mean, you've got 1,000 households, 1,000 additional households that are expected to form in the next 5 years. Senior households. Are they all at this income range? No, they're not. And in fact, probably 15% of them are at this income range. So, you know, you've got conventionally, you have a need for conventional apartments as well. To Trustee Krause's point, you've got a growing need for senior housing, and it's multifaceted. And we're just looking to take care of one piece of it on this, you know, 4-acre site.
Just to interject for a moment, to answer Trustee Krause's question regarding what the comprehensive planning during the meetings, the seniors that we talked to wanted something that was affordable. A lot of them were living on pensions or on Social Security alone. They're looking for options. We didn't discuss heights of buildings, density of buildings, single-family townhouses or anything like that. They wanted just various options. So this is one particular option.
Yep, that's all it is.
Did you look at any other properties in Cary?
We did, but actually it was quite a while ago. I mean, we settled on this site for the reasons that we talked about, and in fact, last year we were trying to put the site under control. We didn't think the timing was right for a number of reasons, and we continued to pursue this site for all the reasons that we had discussed.
I have a problem with the site. I think that your pursuit of the site has to do with the scoring with Ida and its proximity to things such as shopping, the drugstore, post office, Metra, and the price you're able to get for the property. I think if this comes into Cary, a much more suitable place would be on the other side of 14, not shoehorned in behind Jewel. And I just don't believe that people want to spend their golden years looking out at the loading dock of Ace Hardware. I don't see it.
Would you be addressing that at all with, could you do anything from a standpoint of
Yeah, we've
firming it up? I mean,
talked
I
about-
don't know that they wouldn't see.
Yeah, we'd
I
have
agree, that
a
would certainly be a
significant
nice
berm and a significant landscaping buffer. I mean, that's, you know, it's a legitimate point, but we need to invest in that area, and, you know, the site plan takes that into account, at least superficially, but absolutely.
So this is the,
It's an infill site. I mean,
this is the Broker Dade site, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
The potential hotel site that's had a sign for all 13 years that I've lived here in Cary. The first 5 or 6 when we had some of the best economic times that we've had in the United States in my lifetime, and nothing happened on that site. So just want to make that point. I think that, you know, with all due respect to some of the comments, I understand very well how the tax credits work. My bank does them. They're a big player. I'm frankly surprised. Maybe we just haven't done business with your firm, but we are a big player in tax credit acquisitions. I personally have several clients that are funded through these programs, and they're some of the most highly regulated and inspected programs, or buildings rather, than I'm aware of. I mean, individual companies or individual people that have the wherewithal to run and own 50 and 60 unit apartment complexes aren't inspected as much as these. And to your point, if they don't meet the requirements, they're shut down very, very quickly. There's lots of oversight to it. So I'm very comfortable, frankly, with the program. I understand the finances of it. Maybe there's some issues that some folks don't. I think they should look into it if they don't. My biggest issue with this is that I think from an aesthetics point of view, when I looked at the drawings and I realized these are very, very preliminary, they need a lot of work. I've never seen in my 13 years here that site being viable for a hotel. I don't know what else really would go there. I concur with some of the comments about looking to the back of Jewel. It seems to me like the front should be the back and the back should be the front, but that's not really what you're here to determine today. You're just looking at viability. So I support it. I have a lot of comments and questions that if we ever get to that point about the way it should look and maybe set up a little bit differently, but in terms of development on that side, I think it's a good addition to Cary. It makes sense for seniors to be able to walk to the Jewel, walk through the park, and walk to other places within the community. So thank you for bringing it to us.
Appreciate the feedback.
I would concur, though, that, and I understand what Trustee Kostler's concern was, but I think from a senior standpoint, you do want places, whatever senior development you're doing, you want them to be in walking distance. Because a lot of them would prefer to be able to just get out and get that little exercise to walk over there. And if they can go to the Jewel and some of the, you know, I mean, gosh, get Galati, some business, a few different things to stay within the community. I think location-wise, I'm not sure how it's set up. I would have to agree that I didn't think it was very pretty. I just think there could be a lot that would enhance the look of it, which gives a totally different vibe when you have a look that looks like it's going to fit in with where it is. I don't think what we've seen here looks like that would fit in there.
Right.
But as Trustee Judick said, I don't think that's your goal today. It's just to kind of get a direction and a feel. And I'm pretty comfortable with tax credits too, because I've worked with IDA for a long time, so I think I understand it.
I appreciate the feedback. I agree that design definitely needs work, but we would invest significant dollars on the skin of the building as well and make sure it's appropriate. You know, the only thing I'd say as a follow-up is, again, you do have a lot of these seniors here within the municipal limits. I mean, they are residents and they're more isolated than maybe they should be. This is the kind of community that offers them community and security and vibrancy. And that's part of the intent of this.
Any other questions? Trustee Chapman, do you have something to say?
Can you bring back up the slide about the population aging? I don't know if it was 40%. Jeff is right that we need to look at other single-family homes for our seniors, but we need to look at both. It's going to grow almost 12% in 5 years, the number of senior households. We can afford to look at both here in Cary. We can afford to have the people that want to live by themselves and off, and we can also have a supportive community as this is purporting to be. So I'm in favor of us moving forward this. I can see it meeting several needs in our community, and thanks for bringing it here to us.
Appreciate the feedback. Appreciate all the feedback.
I have a question regarding the interior units, the 1 and 2 bedroom units. I thought that at one point, were there going to be individual laundry facilities in each of the units other than just because I would think that the seniors would prefer to have like stackable washers and dryers in each one of the units.
You're saying they would prefer?
I believe so, yes.
That's a cost question. It's a cost issue. No, we had been planning for the laundry rooms on each floor, which we find are, you know, another way that kind of promotes community. But sure, that's another way to tackle it as well, with the stackables in the units. But that's not what we had contemplated.
Any other questions? Well, do we have a consensus to move forward to the next step?
Yes.
I'm not in favor of rezoning the
Neil,
property.
yeah, I'm not crazy about the location, just because comprehensive plan, you know, all the time that went into it, people say they want commercial there. I'd just be curious if there are other areas that already exist that are already the R3 designation, to look at those properties. That's just me.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question, and Brian said there aren't any left in Cary.
You did say there were some, I thought.
Yeah,
Wasn't there
but
another
this isn't
senior?
R3 now, so, I mean, there's other land. If we're going to rezone, we're going to rezone, right?
Correct.
Right, there is no other vacant R3 in our
Right.
village right now.
There's no-
But this isn't
This isn't
R3.
either, though.
No, there's
So if
no-
we're going to find a place, we're going to rezone
Rezone it anyway.
regardless.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was.
But I'm not in favor of rezoning this parcel.
Can I just ask a question, and I don't mean to really be antagonistic about it, but I did make the comment that when I moved into this town, the first thing I saw was this sign for Broker Dave, and, you know, the new board members haven't heard this before, but Mark has heard it on a number. I pretty much on an annual basis ask our economic development folks that we've had and our previous mayors, what's happening on the Broker Dave site? And in 13 years, nothing has happened on the Broker Dave site. To me, it is somewhat of a challenge site. And frankly, Jeff, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I would love to see an income tax producing use on that site. 13 years, nothing. And really the first, what is it, maybe 6 or 7 of that 13-year period, our stock market, our economy was as strong as it's been in any of our lifetimes, and nobody did a thing on that property. So I'd have to ask you, what would you anticipate is going to happen now that we have an economy like we have, where things don't move very quickly?
Is this the first thing that's come along for this parcel since then? I mean, why do we have to jump at the first thing? You know, if it sat there for 13 years, I'm okay with it sitting there for another 2-3 years. You know, we gave up the First Street and Pearl Street. That was zoned light industrial. We gave that up for apartment complex. Now we're giving up another light industrial area that's available for other uses. We're considering giving this up. I'm not in favor of rezoning this property for another apartment complex.
Okay, it doesn't answer my question, but I can appreciate your position.
Well, and I guess on that, I'm just wondering if you feel like every piece of land, Trustee Dudek, should be built.
I didn't say that.
on. Well, it seems like you're implying that.
That-
No, I
that's
didn't
one
say
of the
anything.
impression I'm
I
getting
asked
too.
Jeff what he would anticipate being on that property, given the fact that in the last 13 years, there's been no interest in it.
I don't have a
That's all
magic
asked.
ball, Rick. You know, I don't know, you know, so, but to say this is what we have to do just because we want to develop something, it just seems like, oh, we got to develop, you know, everything with anything. And I'm not in favor of doing that.
Okay, I can appreciate that.
I agree, Jeff.
Well, I believe that we have a 4-3 consensus to move it to the next level.
But if it requires a rezoning, doesn't that require a supermajority?
Brian, can you speak to that on the record, please?
No, rezoning just requires a simple majority at the zoning board. It depends on what the vote would be at the zoning board. If it's a favorable vote in favor of the rezoning, it's just a simple majority at the village board.
Which goes back to my concern of the appointments to the zoning and planning board and the importance of those people.
Thank
What,
you.
was that a little smirk I saw, Brian? Did I see you give a little smirk over here to Chris or something? Okay, good.
I really appreciate all the feedback. I also appreciate the concerns that have been expressed. Again, we're reacting to an obvious, strong, clear, present market need that is unaddressed, that has to do with your citizens. And this is not your only answer. This is one part of the puzzle. So I don't know if it's a site-specific concern or what, but you know, we're trying to meet the needs, address some of the objectives within your affordable housing plan, within the comprehensive plan. But I appreciate some of the concerns expressed by the trustees as well. So, and I appreciate the time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward to a discussion on contracting social worker services. Chief?
I come before you to propose a solution to some of the issues that we're having in regards to providing support for those individuals that are experiencing their problems related to domestic disputes or domestic violence and mental health issues. This is a agreement with Turning Point. Turning Point is a service group that offers programs in a variety of different categories. related to what we were looking for. I first, approached this issue from a couple of different perspectives. The first one was a model that I was used to in my previous employment, and that was approaching another governmental body, township, to see if there was any interest in perhaps employing a social worker and sharing costs and access, and there was no interest expressed in that. I also approached another agency, another law enforcement agency that has a police social worker on staff, and there was no interest in sharing that individual because they were very happy with the services that they were provided by that particular individual. So this is the solution that I found so far, and as it relates to the Village of Cary and the Cary Police Department, we're not unique. And where we hurt people in domestic violence incidents, mental health issues, and then in traffic crashes. Traffic crashes aren't going to be solved by a police social worker or access to social services. But I think we can address the repeated need to respond to certain households or individuals to maybe have access on a more proactive basis by some type of social service. And what I found, and what was very interesting, is when I contacted Turning Point, the executive director, Jane Farmer, was very enthusiastic. She was excited about partnering up with the Cary Police Department in providing, right now, is kind of a conceptual or, beta program. It can be expanded, it can be, reduced, but she was very interested in doing this, and what was very educational to me in regards to a historical perspective was that this used to occur. There was a grant at one time that did provide this type of service to departments within McHenry County, and they lost funding and they just stopped providing that service. So what you have in the your packet is a letter from Turning Point indicating that they would provide 1 day of service, 8 hours on a Friday, and would address minimally the domestic violence, mental health issues, linking clients to certain resources as needed, and follow-ups. And that was really what I was looking for, was for a mechanism that we could have our staff route issues that may be, helped by this type of service to, some type of resource. So that's conceptually what I'm looking for. Turning Point offers a couple of different programs. They offer them bicultural, bilingual. They have comprehensive domestic violence victim services, children's services, trauma-informed mental health programs, partner abuse intervention programs, and the services that they provide, those are programs. Services are emergency shelter, comprehensive victim support services. These are free services. The children's services are free services. Trauma-based mental health services that are charged on a need-based sliding scale, and partner abuse intervention program that are fee-based, charged on a need-based sliding scale. So what Turning Point did respond to in fiscal year 2015 was 1,645 total clients that were served, 3,972 nights of shelter, 1,200 adult victims of domestic violence, over 3,000 hotline calls, 211 child victims, 30 victims under the age of 5, and 101 mental health children and adults served. So again, I was looking for some direction as it relates to, is this something that I'm very interested in doing, but if there was some support in regards to going forward and securing these services. We did budget for it. There's adequate funds available to secure this, and again, right now it would be kind of a beta test or, conceptual program, and we can expand it, or we can, end it if it doesn't seem to be successful. I would entertain any questions that you would have or comments.
Chief, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
I don't know.
I just had a question. Is there any way for the department to recoup some of the costs through restitution? Say a domestic violence situation where you have an arrestee that is then convicted or receives supervision or whatever. Would you be able to retain or recoup any of that?
I don't know how we would split the costs of the individual. I would have to, examine that, because I don't know how we would do that based on, us
With
securing.
the fines and fees, though?
Well, we do that anyways, so we would get that, but I don't know if we could add to what we get restitution for, because generally restitution is for, police officer has uniform damage, they have to provide restitution. If they damage something from the victim, the court might order restitution for the victim. I don't know if they would, and I haven't addressed it, but I could look into if they would entertain restitution for services.
Right. And then my other question was, does Cary have the ability to refer the victim directly to Turning Point? So let's say they wanted those services, rather than using the Cary Police Department as the middle person, would you be able to say to the victim, there's an entity out there named Turning Point, they offer these services, where you'd refer directly to them, where the victim then is responsible for those costs, rather than,
That's the
The Village
current
of
model.
Cary.
That's the current model that we have right now, but it's not very proactive, and it's really dependent upon the person taking the initiative to go to Woodstock, because that's where the services would be available, where bringing services to the individual, I think, would motivate them more maybe to seek those services, or maybe enlighten them or educate them in regards to services that are available, because, as you know, police officers will say, call Turning Point.
Sure, I get that. I'm just
Yeah.
looking at it from a taxpayer standpoint, the cost that we're paying to provide a social worker to somebody, when, if they truly want that, if that's something that they want to seek, then if they went to the actual place and got that, then that's on them and not on us. So that's why I'm asking that.
Yeah, and again, I don't know, based on how Turning Point delivers their services, if that might not just be the case anyways in regards to some of the programs that they offer. But I would also, kind of bring up that there might be some individuals that are challenged in regards to, transportation, and now we're bringing someone here that they can talk to directly and perhaps be directed or informed of the services that are available, versus calling somebody on a telephone call and then trying to get out to Woodstock
Does McHenry County offer anything?
in regards to
Like any sort of crisis intervention, domestic violence
just what,
intervention?
yeah, and I should have mentioned that too, is right now, we would be the only agency that would be looking into doing this again. And again, I've said this more times than I care to in my career, but everything's cyclical. And we were in a cycle where they've gotten away from providing these type of social services, and because there was grants before, and now, there's a potential here for maybe introducing a program that we would reintroduce those type of services and see what the impact is as it relates to the repeated nature of some of the calls that we have to go to. That's really what I'm looking for, is those repeated calls. Maybe we can intervene and reduce those repeated calls, and maybe assist in regards to, there's legal advocacy that's provided, and maybe help someone not, become a victim of some type of physical injury.
That's kind of where I was. Is there any way to determine whether or not it is successful? What kind of benchmarks are you looking at?
Well, we're going to talk about the department head report, but if you look at the domestic calls for service that we've had this year, we've had a 24.2% increase. So I guess I would be looking at that as a benchmark in regards to if it was successful. I guess success would have to be on a multi-tier, multi-level scale to some degree, and certainly hard numbers are good for that. But I would also look at, if the people that are, using these services, if they're feeling that they were, better able to access these services, I think that's another gauge for success as well.
Do we have anybody on staff currently, like the community, any officers right now kind of doing this job?
I did try to do that. First, we did try. I did try. And with the current staffing levels that I have right now, and the fact that we rotated that particular individual back into patrol, we have an officer that's been assigned to the community relations, crime prevention, special events coordinating position, but she's getting ready to go on FMLA. So there'll be a period of time when that won't be available necessarily because we'll have a vacancy there, number one. But number two, I don't know if police officers should be social workers. Police officers certainly play a role, but I think that, from their perspective, when I did introduce this to the particular officer, they weren't excited about it, and they expressed some concern about doing these type of follow-ups.
I guess my other question then is related to the domestic calls. How many are verbal? How many are physical? Domestic call is a parent arguing with a kid. Do you guys code that as a domestic?
Yes, domestic dispute, and, we also do the domestic batteries as a domestic dispute.
So I guess I would just like a breakdown of, because if it's just a parent arguing with a kid, chances are, the social worker may not get involved, but the repeated calls, like you'd said, how many of those are repeat offenders? Just maybe a little bit of a breakdown on those would be of interest. And then
But even
mental
those,
ones, the mental ones I would be curious of too.
Oh, and those can be significant in regards to last year, we had one that was a death.
Sure.
So, number one, but number two, even the calls that aren't physical, that are an adult arguing with their child, maybe they need some issues or some assistance in regard to parenting. And we're not going to that call. They're going to call, and we're going to continue to go to those calls. So if we can point them in the right direction in regards to obtaining some type of services, I think it's beneficial for us.
And I think, I think all of us want to be good financial stewards of the taxpayers' money. And I think that Trustee Cavalli, I understand you looking at saying, where are we, where are we going to recoup this? But I'm thinking as I'm listening to you sitting back, the things that come to my mind are twofold. And one is that if we have less of those calls, we are in a sense saving money for our taxpayers because our police officers can do other work. So we're not tapping them out as much, or we may not need to hire someone more if we can help with some of those issues. And then the second, and this is just me, and that is, I hear you saying you have a need for it. Then I support that.
And I'm not unique, the Village of Cary Police Department is not unique in this regard.
There's something to be said for starting something, for leading something, if it's a new concept, and perhaps it's something that we look at it and we decide, a couple other maybe villages or municipalities find out, hey, Cary is doing this. Maybe then they tap onto us like we looked at going with ELA and the other, it looked like we looked at that initially saying, can we join in with someone else? And it just didn't work out.
Right.
Perhaps Crystal Lake might say, boy, we'd like to do a joint, collaboration with you and share in this moving forward. I don't know if it would be successful, but if you've budgeted for it and we're here and you feel that there's a need and we might be able to better utilize services of our officers in a better capacity for what they're trained for, then I would like to at least pursue it a little bit further. I'm support it.
Any other comments?
Yes, so the 8,100 just covers us till the end of the fiscal year. It's not, obviously, it's not a full 12-month term that you're talking about with the $8,100.
I'm sorry, it's $300 a week, so 52, so it's $1,560 a year.
So
$15,600 a year, I'm sorry. I was giving you a discount.
I was just going to say,
the 8,100 though, you're correct.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You're prorating it for this year?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, okay.
so that was one thing I wanted to just get clarity on. And then the second thing is, it's not mentioned in here if this is a contract that says it's a certain amount payable monthly. Do we enter into a contract? Is it month by month? Is it cancelable? What are the details of that, Chief?
Well, and that would be what I'm here for, is regards to what you'd like to see as it relates to that type of agreement. Right now, this was something that was put together by Turning Point after my discussion with them in terms of what services I'd like to see. So it could be as formal as we like or as informal as we like, is what I was told.
I only have two other things, one question and then the other comment. I think, you just pick up the newspaper any day. Today, the front page of the Tribune's talking about some slain child. So, I mean, you have tremendous issues with mental health, I think, in the general community. So to me, if we stop one thing from happening or one person from getting harmed, it's a relatively small price to pay. That's the comment. The question that I have related to that is, how does insurance protection for that individual work? What if something happens and they're injured, killed, on this Friday, or what happens? How's the insurance coverage?
This person stays a employee of Turning Point. So the answer to that question is they're still an employee of Turning Point, number one. And my question was, social workers have to be licensed, and they have professional insurance as it relates to their practice. And that's why I was looking at maybe partnering with somebody else, especially someone that was licensed, that had their own insurance, and that would be on or incurred by Turning Point. And we would be operating under, the social worker would be operating under their auspices.
Okay. It doesn't keep us from getting sued in the event something happens, but at least the insurance is.
Well, what I can say is that we'll certainly have village attorney review this, prior to execution.
I mean, to me, it's a relatively small expense, and it does offer something, I think, to the general public, so it seems to make sense.
I do just have one other question I thought of, sorry. You said right now the current practice is to refer people directly to Turning Point. Do you have any sort of stats on how many people actually utilize the services of Turning Point? Do they provide you with any of that information?
Well, they wouldn't have that information because, we'd have to say, hey,
I
we
don't know if
called
they
somebody.
do like an intake form, like, how'd you hear about us, or?
No,
if
I know
there's something specific.
Mundelein was doing a victim assistance type of form. I think some other Lake County agencies adopted it. I know I looked at it prior to my leaving Lake Zurich, but no, right now we don't capture that information. It'd be anecdotal at best. We don't know on the other end if they go there, and we don't know if they went there because of our referral.
But is your question, can we do that if we have a service agreement and measure, referrals and those sorts of things? Is that the line of your questioning?
Well, it sounds like you would know because the person would be here if we went to contract. But I'm just curious now, like.
Follow up.
Let's say, 10% of the people you refer there utilize the services versus 80% of the people.
Yeah, I don't have that number for you.
And I doubt that you'd find it because of the HIPAA laws. Chief, stop me whenever I hit something that's wrong. Recently, there have been changes in how police officers interact with the mental health in our community.
You know what? I don't know that there's been a change. I think there's been maybe, we've always had like crisis intervention team officers, but that required 40 hours of training. 18 of our police officers, that was in an article that was published in the Daily Herald, went to NAMI, was that NAMI? I'm sorry, NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, I think. Mental health first aid course that was delivered at Cary Fire Protection District Station 1. So I don't think that, maybe our perspective was to lock them up because of their behavior versus looking at it from a standpoint of what caused their behavior. So maybe that's the only change that's occurred.
And has there been a change in how the police department has to interact with the person in order to take them to the hospital if they don't want to go?
Well, yeah, there's a petition, but that petition isn't automatic, and they get a review on that petition, and a police officer, firefighter, family member, anyone that has direct knowledge in regards to some type of information that would have indicated that they were a danger to themselves or others, we can fill it out, but it doesn't mean that they're staying in the hospital because they get a hearing, within 24 hours. I think it's 24 hours.
And would that responsibility then transfer from the Cary Police Department to our part-time social worker to make that call, to make the determination?
Well, I don't know that we're talking
Refer.
about people that are, someone that we would take direct action, because generally the sequence of events that occur in that particular instance that you're outlining would be to call the fire department, have them transported for an evaluation, and the police officer would follow the fire department to whatever hospital they sent them to fill out the petition. So, that would be the sequence of events of somebody that was a direct,
Okay.
concern.
And
But
at that
this
point-
is more related to directing people for follow-up, and there would have to be an internal mechanism within our organization to have officers route, calls that they've handled or reports to an individual so that they can follow up on them. That's the way I envision this
I get
happening.
it. So those other calls are going to the fire department, and the fire department is then processing those individuals?
Well, it's not, they only transport. We're generally the entity that has to fill out the petitions for mental health issues. If there's a issue related to, a concern for them that's immediate.
So if you get a call, the police officers go there, or do you call up the person at Turning Point and say, hey, I've got...
If it's immediate, the police officer goes there, the fire department will wait until the scene's secure, and then they'll come in.
And when does the social worker come to talk to
In that
person?
particular instance, they would be directed to resources or services directly. What I'm talking about are those issues that we go to, that we've handled, and that we route for follow-up action later on down the road.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Chief.
The chief has asked for this. Is this something we want to proceed with?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Am I still up?
Why don't you, while you're standing and looking so handsome, that we can go with your report, please.
And you have the statistical information for September. I'm sorry I wasn't here for the last meeting when you had the August information. Again, we're seeing, I think, pretty much what other police agencies or law enforcement agencies are seeing as it relates to traffic enforcement actions. However, what we are seeing are those non-discretionary actions like no valid driver's license, suspend and revoke driver's license. They tend to be increasing as compared to 2014. You can see that our business checks, subdivision checks, and miles traveled as compared to August and July this month, they have been reduced. However, what I did do is I have to tell you that I tend to be a numbers-oriented individual. I tend to be somebody that kind of looks at statistics and things of that nature. So I gave you a graph that indicates trend lines as it relates to like miles traveled for preventive patrol. And you can see that the trend line is increasing, not decreasing. And everything else is pretty much staying pretty flat as it relates to activity generated. Other things that are significant would be that we've seen this year so far a 7.4% reduction in traffic crashes, and I will tell you that that's fickle. I wish I would, in good conscience, I could tell you, I wish I could say that I would take full credit for it, but I can't. I can tell you that I would hope that our, preventive patrol and our, appearance on the road tends to influence people's behavior. And then finally, there were less reported thefts and criminal damage in the month of September as compared to 2014. But if you'll look at the statistical information that's provided as a supplement to this, that the deceptive practice and identity theft, again, we're not unique as it relates to that. We've seen 127% increase in deceptive practices and 183% increase in identity theft. And that's just something that is a trend right now. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them as it relates to the information related to our activity in September.
I just have a quick comment on the
Sure.
deceptive practices and identity theft, because that's kind of what I highlighted, how much they've gone up. Is there something that we could put a blurb in the newsletter about be careful identity theft? Something where we just put some small blurb about it? We start, I know we've done it before, but I'm just
Yeah.
thinking if it's up that much, especially as we're entering the holiday season, you start to see people going with credit cards and really doing that. I just think it would be a nice thing to get out to our residents, because we know that that's on the rise.
Well, we could do that, especially as it relates to, as you indicate, purchasing gifts and increased purchasing,
Right.
I guess, in the upcoming months. And I believe we'll have another, not bulletin, but newsletter. Geez, I'm sorry.
We'll take care of it.
Going out, so we'll take care of that.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Jacob, you have anything?
No, sir.
Brian?
Just a really quick point to mention, some of you may notice the Safari Daycare, which is over on Carol Duncan Road and Main Street, recently did close. They closed last week, their operations there. We do already have another operator, local individual is looking to purchase that building for another daycare use. So hopefully that building will remain dark very long. Also, just wanted to highlight this month, we've had 4 ribbon cuttings through work with the Chamber of Commerce. Glazy Days Pottery Studio just had a ribbon cutting for their new location downtown, right across the street from the BMO Harris Bank. And then Foundations Montessori School has opened within the old Oak Knoll grade school on First Street. And then Loving Family Care, and then the law office of Rita McDade also had ribbon cuttings earlier this month for their facilities in the downtown area. So some good business activity taking place.
Can you also give an update on the permitting process for the other daycare facility that we've recently reviewed and then Dunkin' Donuts?
Sure. Both the Kids Are Kids project and the Dunkin' Donuts facility have submitted for permits. They're under staff review at this point. Kids Are Kids is looking to obtain a site development permit to start work on the site construction of their property, hopefully break ground this year. Dunkin' Donuts is in for their, looking for revisions to their first set of comments that they received back, but they should be resubmitting shortly for a second review for their building permits for that site.
And then lastly, quickly, are there any other staff updates on Meyer Material? I don't have any, but any updates on status application?
Not at this point, no.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, is there any other discussion by the committee of the whole of any requested items future? Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Are you-